My name is Will Manny, and you're listening to Pro Lacrosse Talk.
Tom Schreiber. Sidearm whip. Scores.
Now in front. Pannell scores. Paul Rabel splits two and scores.
Kylie O'Miller showing off those shifty skills.
Kelly, not shy, bounces one home. What a start.
Welcome to Pro Lacrosse Talk. I'm Hutton, he's Adam, and together we have all the latest news from all your favorite professional lacrosse leagues. Happy to have you guys for another episode of Pro Lacrosse Talk. As usual, I, Hutton, am joined by my co-host, Adam. Adam, how are you today?
I'm good, brother. Trying to stay cool, man. It's like a heat index of 107 here in Baltimore, so I'm trying to stay inside. I walked my dog earlier, and he was not having it, so I'm gonna try and stay cool today.
Yeah, no, definitely a hot one. But I know you're going to the beach soon, and I'll be going to the beach soon, so it'll be nice to hit the ocean a little bit and cool off. But you know, a lot of great lacrosse games this weekend. Even though the PLL was off, some great MLL games. If you decide not to tune in, you missed some good ones. Even the WPLL had some good games as well. In addition to those games we're going to talk about, we also have the MLL All-Star Game rosters and some Game of Thrones-inspired team names, as well as an exclusive interview with WPLL Pride goalie and Team USA goalie, Liz Hogan. And we're going to talk about the trade deadline for the PLL that's coming up on July 22nd. So a lot to do today. Let's get into our fast break. Adam, why don't you take it away?
This past Thursday, the Lizards defeated the Cannons in a big victory for them, 15-12. The Outlaws defeated the Blaze 18-17. On Saturday, the Cannons were able to hold off the Blaze 17-16 in another close one. On Sunday, the Bayhawks snuffed the Rattlers for a comeback victory 13-11. The PLL obviously was off this weekend, but we did have some games that were postponed previously for the WPLL made up at Loyola University this past weekend. The Brave were able to beat the Command 13-9, and in Game 2, the Pride topped the Fire 16-12 to knock the Fire out of playoff contention. So we'll talk a little bit about the WPLL and the playoff outlook a little bit later on, but that's your fast break for the week.
All right, so that's your fast break. Now let's do our quick stick. The MLL announced that the 2019 MLL Championship weekend will be held in Denver, with the semifinal games being played at Denver University's Peter Barton Stadium on October 4th, and the championship will be held at Dick's Sporting Goods Field. Interesting there, Dick's Sporting Goods Field is also home to the PLL weekend following the All-Star Game, so it's nice to get a little comparison between the turnouts for both the PLL and the MLL. In addition to that, the Halifax Thunderbirds, previously the Rochester Nighthawks, just announced a new coach. Micah Kersey is a 5-time NLL champion, most notably played with the Rochester Nighthawks, will be their coach from their first season as the Thunderbirds. The NBC Sports PR department recently released its mid-season report for the PLL. They announced that the Chaos Atlas game from Week 2 had a total viewership of 412,000 viewers, which is the most watched outdoor pro lacrosse game in the history of television. And it was only second to the 2005 NLL Indoor Championship game in terms of most watched pro lacrosse game. So NBC's doing some great stuff with the PLL. There's a lot more interesting information in this report. You guys can go to NBC Sports Group pressbox.com for the full report, but I recommend you guys check that out. And then finally on our quick stick, the MLL announced its All-Star Game rosters with some Game of Thrones-inspired team names. They're going with Team Ice, which will be led by Lyle Thompson, and Team Fire, led by Rob Pannell. I don't know if that's actually was inspired by Game of Thrones, but I like to say it is. Hopefully the game itself will be more satisfying than Game of Thrones Season 8, if you guys are Game of Thrones fans. So that's the roster team names, and that's a good segue to go into the rosters. Rob Pannell and Lyle Thompson went on a conference call, and they picked these teams. You can see the video online. We've shared it on our website. But for Team Fire, led by Rob Pannell, you have Mark Cockerton, Steele Stanwyck, Dylan Malloy, Shane Jackson, Kyle Denoff, Nick Mariano, Jack Curran, Zach Courier, Mike Schlosser, Kevin Crowley, James Fahey, Jake Pulver, Jack Kerrigan, Ben Randall, Alex Woodall, Greg Puskeljian, Rylan Reese, TJ Camizio, Chris Madelon, and Nick Morocco. And then for Team Ice, led by Lyle Thompson, you have Colin Heacock, Bryce Wasserman, John Grant Jr., Randy Stotts, Brendan Kavanaugh, Brian Cole, Brendan Sunday, Isaiah Davis-Allen, Brendan Bomberry, Matt Abbott, Craig Chick, who will be replacing Liam Burns, Jesse Bernhardt, Justin Pugel, Finn Sullivan, Max Adler, Kevin Reisman, CJ Costabile, Zach Goodridge, and in cage, Dylan Ward and Nico Amato. So those are your all-star rosters. They're both loaded. I think the most interesting storyline for me has to be Shane Jackson and Randy Stotts are not on the same team. So I don't know if it's going to be a little Wonder Twins scenario where if they're not together, they're not going to be able to perform at a high level. But that will be an interesting matchup to watch. You have 3 Atlanta Blaze players in Stotts, Brian Cole, and Brendan Sunday playing on Team Ice. So I don't know if that's going to affect their powers in any way since they play for the Blaze, but we'll be on Team Ice. Some other storylines that we thought were interesting. Will ESPN2 announcers make ice and fire puns throughout the game? If they don't, I mean, we certainly will on our social media. And we have a write-up on our website, kind of going into more, what to watch. But, we're excited for this All-Star game. We're actually going to have some coverage from it as well. But, some interesting names with the ice and fire. I'm not sure how I feel about them right now. I think it's a cool way to split them up, and the uniforms look really good. They just recently released those. But, yeah, we got to get some Game of Thrones references. Come on, I mean, if we got Joe Beninati and Quentin Kesnick in the booth for this MLL game, I'm hoping, they at least have some tongue-in-cheek references to it. So we'll see. We'll be watching. You guys can watch that on ESPN2 on July 27th. Or, if you're in the Baltimore, Annapolis area, you can go see it at Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium in Annapolis live and in person. So definitely going to be a fun game to watch, and we're looking forward to covering it for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And if only the San Francisco Dragons were still in the league, we'd even have some more Game of Thrones puns to go around.
R.I.P. San Francisco Dragons. All right, well, now that we're on the topic of MLL, let's discuss the Lizards-Cannons game. Adam, why don't you tell me about this game that was a really big win for the Lizards and kind of kept their playoff hopes alive.
Yeah, absolutely. One of their biggest stars, not named Rob Pennell, really came up big in this 15-12 victory for the Zards. Dylan Malloy had 4 goals on the day. One of them probably the best goal I've arguably seen all season. He literally was able to snag a ball off the end line through someone's legs, then pretty much truck sticked one of the Boston defenders to go to cage for a pretty fantastic goal. You have to give it to the Zards. They hung around. They were down by 3 after the first half, but really came out in the second half firing on all cylinders. That third quarter was really the difference when it came to the scores. The first, second, and fourth were pretty close. So it was a really strong performance by the Lizards, who had 6 players score at least 2 goals on the day for that well-rounded outburst, which they were really needing when it came to keeping in the playoff hunt. So they have 3 games coming up soon, 3 straight games against the Bayhawks. So they're in the thick of things again. Just as we said last week, it really came down to this one, and then going forward, that they have some big games coming up.
Yeah, no, the Lizards really seemed like they had a fire under them. I think being 1-5 was as disappointing as a start as you can get, and I think they really came out to play. I mean, you had Rob Pennell getting a huge ground ball, early in the game, which ended up leading to a transition goal by Justin Ray. Like little things like that, like to go across the midline and, get a GB, kind of shows that it takes a team effort, and you have their biggest stars on the team like him and Dylan Malloy, really stepping up. And to quote the great yodeling kid, Mason Ramsey, if you don't want no giddy up, then giddy out of Dylan Malloy's way, because he bulldozed through multiple Cannons defenders to get that goal. It made SportsCenter's top 10. Definitely one of my favorite goals of the year. When we do a recap of the best goals of the year at the end of the season, that's definitely going to be on it. I mean, it had a little bit of everything. You can't ask for a better play. So way to represent Dylan Malloy. We'll have to have him on the podcast at some point. But yeah, overall, a big win for the Lizards, and a much-needed one that will hopefully keep their playoffs hopes alive as we head into the second half of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And give a shout-out to Lizards goalie Austin Kaut, who had 16 saves on the day, held Mark Cockerton to just 1 goal. So that was a big one. We've been waiting for that Kaut game to come about, and it finally did.
Yep, no, definitely. And we had another great game following that one on that Thursday. The Outlaws versus the Blaze was a nail-biter. Outlaws got off to a quick start, but they kind of let the Blaze hang around. It seemed like the Outlaws were kind of dominating, but they kept letting the Blaze get some easy ones, and Brendan Sunday ended up getting a goal with 16 seconds left in the second quarter that kind of, gave the Blaze some momentum going into the next half. They only trailed by 4 at that point, and they came out hot in the third quarter. And then with 5 minutes left in the fourth, with the game tied at 15, Dylan Ward made a huge save, and Newbold ended up getting the ground ball and forcing transition, which led to a 2-point rip from him to give the Outlaws a 17-15 lead. But the Blaze showed that they weren't going to go down without a fight all day. Less than 20 seconds later, they answered with Shane Jackson's first goal of the day. And then Brennan Sunday had a super nice crease dive with 2:40 left to play to tie the game at 17. And it looked like we were poised for overtime at this point, but the Blaze got a controversial shot clock violation. So if you guys were watching the game, the shot clock actually went off. But they said that it was a technical error on the shot clock's part and that they had actually used up all the time on the shot clock. And so they awarded the ball back to Denver with 20 seconds left. And that kind of gave Denver an opportunity to put one away. And they got their open look in Kavanaugh, but his shot ended up hitting off the post, and it ended up being Courier who got the rebound to score the game winner with only 2 seconds left. So a tough loss for the Blaze. That wouldn't be their only tough loss, unfortunately, of the weekend, but overall a great game. The big guys on the Outlaws came to play. You had Chris Aslanian, 4 goals, 1 assist. Ryan Lee from RIT, who's only played in 3 games. He had 3 goals and an assist. He's had a lot of work conflicts which have prevented him from making most of the Thursday games. But he made this one, and he made the most of it. Overall, though, a great game from the Outlaws and the Blaze, and it was a tough one for the Blaze to lose because they would travel back home to Atlanta to face the Cannons in another close one for the Blaze. It was back and forth in the first 2 quarters. Ended up the Blaze leading 9-7 at halftime. But the Cannons limited Atlanta to 1 shot in the third quarter and eventually scored 10 straight goals to take a 17-10 lead late in the fourth quarter. So it really looked, like the game was out of reach for the Blaze. But Dylan Maher scored 2 2-point goals for the Blaze. If you look at them both, they looked almost identical. And Maher's second 2-point goal ended up pulling the Blaze within 1 with 2 minutes left to play. And then the Blaze were able to get the possession back with a minute left after a delay of game penalty by the Cannons that actually saw Nick Morocco have to go sit in the penalty box. So that's when you had rookie Tate Boyce come in, who had never played an MLL game in his life, to go up against Blaze's lethal man up, and he made probably the save of the year. Stotts found Jackson right on the doorstep, wide open, and Bush just blanked him right on the crease. I mean, you saw Shane Jackson's body language after this. He just crouched down. He couldn't believe that he missed this wide open goal that would have, tied it up with just a minute left. And that ended up being the game-winning save. Tate Boyce, rookie out of Providence College, coming up big, making his only save of the day in his first MLL game, and it happened to be, the game winner.
Yeah, man, that's every goalie's dream, right? Maybe play a little more than that, but coming up with that big one-on-one save to finalize a victory for your team. It's been a tough one. That's a tough weekend for the Blaze. They had to play 4 games in 8 days, travel from the Baltimore area back home, then to Denver, back home. That's a lot of traveling, and there's a lot of things that could have swayed their way to give them 2 victories this weekend, and it's a shame the first game kind of maybe not exactly came down to that clock error, but that's a tough one, and it's a frustrating weekend for them because they could be a lot higher in the standings if it had fared, kind of swayed their way rather than the other. But they're currently in 4th place at 4-4. So we'll see what happens kind of going forward. All you can say is just like the PLL, the standings are pretty close. And a couple weeks ago we were worried that the MLL might already know who those 4 teams are, and depending on how right after the All-Star break goes, that may be the case still. And I still think the 4 in playoff position right now, Outlaws, Cannons, Bayhawks, and Blaze are the 4 best teams. But you never know what can happen with those Lizards going forward after a spark like they had this weekend. Unfortunately, I think the Rattlers are done after their lost to the Bayhawks this weekend. I was watching the Bayhawks Rattlers game out this weekend in Hamden, and they had the game on, luckily, and I was super excited to watch. And, I grabbed a drink, went back to my seat, and when I looked up, the Bayhawks were losing 7-2. And, they just didn't have it in them, despite having that lead. They weren't able to hold on, and the usual suspects for the Bayhawks came out to play after that when they came back. Stanwyck had 3-1. Lyle Thompson had 2-2, which is surprisingly quiet against that squad, but another big game for him. So he's the league's leading scorer at this point, at the halfway point. There were some highlights for the Rattlers. Obviously, that early lead, they kind of came out firing all cylinders. Bradley Voigt probably had one of the best goals of the season, a highlight reel goal that you probably will see. Kind of that went viral on social media this past weekend. But it was just another tough one, tough break for the Rattlers. Exciting start, similar ending to the rest of the season, and I don't really see where they go from here.
Yeah, no, it's disappointing because it looked like the Rattlers were really going to, hold on, but, they kind of just ran out of steam. But you mentioned that Bradley Voigt goal. I mean, the around the world goal. Talk about, we had two brilliant introductions to some rookies this weekend with Tate Boyce's save and then Bradley Voigt's beautiful behind the back shot. He just wrapped it around himself. That was in our top plays this week. Welcome to the MLL. Bradley, I mean, the guy went undrafted in both the PLL and the MLL. I don't know how. He played phenomenally well at Syracuse, but, we're glad that he's in the league now, and we're looking forward to watching him more for the Rattlers. And that is one of the bright spots of this Rattlers team. They do have a lot of young talent, so I think the future for them is bright. But, I think their inexperience is definitely showing this year. And their season is quickly dwindling away, but at least they do have that going for them. So that concludes our MLO game recaps. Again, some great games this weekend. We're about to get into our interview with WPLL Pride goalie Liz Hogan, but before we do that, let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Pro Lacrosse Talk is lucky enough to have goalie Liz Hogan on the pod with us today. Liz was a standout in cage for Syracuse as a 4-year starter, graduating as the program's all-time leader in saves and ground balls, as well as being the program's first keeper to ever be named to the IWLCA All-American First Team and Goalie of the Year during her junior year. She is currently a member of Team USA and the WPLL Pride. Liz, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So going back a little bit, starting with your career at Syracuse, we have a lot of listeners that are always curious about the recruiting process. So what went into your process during recruiting, and being from the Rochester area originally, was Syracuse kind of an easy choice from the beginning?
Actually, it wasn't. It was funny. I remember going to a Syracuse game as a freshman in high school, and I remember sitting there with my mom, my sister, and I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll never play here. Just never really something I thought I could do. And then, I'm a little bit older, so my recruiting process was a little bit different in the sense that I didn't really pick a school until my senior year. But I was definitely a little bit overlooked, and I didn't, Syracuse was an option, but at the time they weren't even, they hadn't even won a tournament game at that point. And they did my senior year in high school. But it just kind of ended up being the perfect fit at the end. I had a couple other schools I was interested in, but Syracuse is ultimately the one that, somehow found its way back into my heart.
That's awesome.
That's great. I mean, you mentioned in the 4 seasons you were there, you guys ended up making the NCAA tournament 3 times, and that included 2 Final Four appearances. So, you really kind of put that program on the map. Obviously, Syracuse was really well known for their men's team, and Syracuse lacrosse legend Gary Gait was your coach, and he became the coach when you entered as a freshman. How was playing for a Syracuse legend, and how did he influence you not only in your playing career but also in your coaching career as well?
It was a big honor to play for Gary. I think, obviously I wasn't recruited by him, but to just play for him was awesome. He is by far and away the most brilliant lacrosse mind I've ever come across, men or women. And so I think as a player, it was awesome because I had the opportunity and he was willing to, let his brain be picked a little bit. We had a lot of lacrosse conversations, which, obviously helped me as a player, but I think as a coach too, just to have his attitude and mentality of being super chill, but then also super interested in learning more about the game. I would beg to say that maybe half of the newest women's rules are because of Gary. Okay. He loves to read the rule book. He loves to take advantage of whatever he can. So I think I've really taken that as both a player and a coach.
That's awesome. So last fall during the U.S. Fall Classic, we were watching the game and saw you drop a dime of a pass to Kylie Miller to get an assist, and that was kind of the talk of the town for a little while there. You've never seemed to shy away from kind of pushing the ball up the field and coming out of net to generate transition. Where do you think that came from in your skill set, and how do you think that puts you apart from other goalies?
Well, I think you just mentioned it. Having Gary as a coach, he was truly someone that, pushed his players to try new things, whether it was, the behind the back or something that hadn't really been done before. Sure. And, I think we even had plays that were set up for a longer clear back when I was in college. And it really just having a coach that has the confidence in you to, make the right choice and do the play, but also the confidence in you to, adapt to the mistakes that you will eventually make. So, I just think having that experience, it breeds confidence, but it also, allows you to understand and try new things that you wouldn't normally do.
That's awesome. So speaking of kind of the new rules and whatnot that are going on with the WPLL, I was actually working the sidelines during the games this past weekend in Loyola, and we were waiting for someone to take the ball down the field now that the goalies have the opportunity to potentially score. Is that something you might attempt at some point this season or next?
I think if the opportunity presents itself, I definitely won't shy away from it. I actually had a Rochester native ask me the other day who's going to score first, me or Blaze. So I guess I got to get it before him because he's getting up the field a lot recently. So we'll see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's funny, and Blaze is actually entering the fastest shot competition this weekend, too, for the PLL. So maybe, the WPLL will have to add a skills competition in the near future. But going into that, how has the pro game differed from playing in college? Obviously, there's a lot of different rules that we just kind of touched on a little bit. But as a whole, how has making that transition been?
Since my playing days in college, the rules have changed a lot just because, the college game rules change, I swear, like every year. So I personally love it. I think the game moves a lot faster. There's no standing on the whistle. You can get that 2-point play, which is really a big game changer. Hopefully it's not against me. And just overall level of skill is just unreal. You're literally playing with the best players in the world. That's
awesome. So you were one of the first players ever drafted actually by the other women's professional league, UWLX. How is playing in the WPLL this season kind of different from that experience so far, and what are your kind of expectations going forward for the WPLL?
I think the UWLX was really that first jump into the pro lacrosse world. They really put women's lacrosse on the map, but I think the WPLL has definitely taken it to another level, and obviously, hopefully in the future, it becomes even more of a professional game. I think we're treated like pros, but I think we obviously have a long ways to go until we're, professional compared to the big four sports or anything. So, maybe in like 10, 20 years we'll get there, but I'm just happy to see right now that we're provided with the opportunity.
You mentioned, hopefully you get there in 10, 20 years, and lacrosse is going to be in the Olympics in less than 10 years. So I guess tell me how important that is to you. Obviously, you played for Team USA. And how do you see the sport growing in those 10 years leading up to that?
Well, I think if history is any indication, I think it'll continue to explode just by virtue of the game changing, and it might look a little bit different, but I think that hopefully we'll have more people not only playing but also representing the sport too. So I'm really excited to see what the game itself looks like, but also just the numbers and how big we can get it to be.
Sure. And kind of going off of that, how has playing professionally really provided you a platform to grow the game, whether that's on the international level, obviously, when it comes to the Olympics, or kind of on the grassroots level here in the U.S.?
I think the biggest benefit of playing professionally and also on the U.S. team is just the access to the kids who maybe aren't so sure that they want to play lacrosse, and really just connecting with them on a personal level. We put on a lot of clinics. There's a lot of kids at our games, and then also just the ability to use social media to reach people. I think it's been really exciting and really rewarding to be able to talk to those kids, not just only about lacrosse and saving balls, but also just life. And I really wish I had a mentor growing up like that. So it's been a really exciting time.
Definitely. I think what you're doing at the youth level and, the growth that the sport is seeing at the youth level is incredible. And, I think it's just going to continue to grow. And it's awesome that these young athletes can now look up to professional lacrosse players and see that as something as possible. Going off of that, we're going to go into a fun little segment we call the 5 and 5. I'm going to start off and ask you 5 lacrosse-related questions, and then Adam will follow up with me, and he'll ask you 5 questions just about life in general. These are supposed to be, just quick answers, whatever comes across your head, and hopefully you have a little fun with it too.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so our first one is, what are some pregame superstitions or routines you have?
The only routine that I have is I eat pasta bolognese the night before every game.
Awesome. And what is your favorite lacrosse memory so far?
Hands down was my freshman year. We beat UNC on my first ever career assist, and we went to our first Final Four, and that was something that I will always remember for sure.
Awesome, that's great. And which one of your WPLL Pride teammates do you find the funniest?
Lauren Murray, hands down, is got to be one of the funniest teammates on the Pride for sure.
Is she the one usually joking around, like in between games or even during the games, or?
Yeah, and I think she's just super sarcastic too. She just always has a one-liner ready to go, and just we literally asked the other day in our group text if it was hard to be that funny, because she's just always so funny.
That's great. Everyone has one of those players. We were talking to some Chaos guys, and apparently Blaze Reardon was that guy on their team. That's great. So number 4, who is someone in the lacrosse community that you admire or look up to, whether it's a coach, teammate, or even an opponent?
So I have 2, and they've been kind of mentors, I guess, in my career, both as a player and coach. But Maggie Cook and Reggie Thorpe were my assistant coaches at Syracuse, and I really feel like they have helped pave the way and are continually still one of my first or second phone calls whenever I have a question.
No, that's awesome. And number 5, what is the top song on your game day playlist right now?
It's got to be Welcome to the Jungle. So it's a
Oh.
Syracuse tradition, but also just something that I've always kept with me.
Great, that's great. All right, Adam, you want to ask her the life questions now?
Yeah, absolutely. What was your favorite class that you took while you were at Q's?
So my spring of senior year, not on game days, I took a wine appreciation class.
Okay.
And that was definitely my favorite class for sure.
What's your preferred wine?
I'm definitely a cab drinker, but
Okay.
being out here, there's a couple zins that I've really started to enjoy. So.
Well, that may answer this next question, but what are some hobbies or activities you enjoy doing when you're not on the field?
I definitely like going wine tasting.
Yep, absolutely.
But so being out here in California too, I think it's awesome that I can go to the mountains in 4 hours and go to the beach in like an hour. So either one of those things I love doing. I love getting outside.
Awesome. What is your favorite movie and why?
This is tough.
That's a tough one, I know.
I don't know if I have a favorite movie. I will say I'm an absolute sucker for Hallmark movies. I know they all end the same, and I know it's the same plot, but I love them.
I like it. It's almost the holiday season, right? So there'll be a couple new ones on there coming up.
Oh, they already got Christmas in July. I've been watching.
There you go. All right, number 4 is, what is your favorite meal, and do you prefer to dine in, take out, or cook at home?
I do a lot of cooking at home, and like I said, pasta bolognese is probably my favorite. It's also my pregame. Outside of that, I love grilling, so any kind of like tri-tip, steak, any kind of meat really is great.
It goes well with that wine, right?
Oh yeah.
And number 5, what's a book on your bookshelf currently that you've read or are reading right now that you'd recommend to a friend or teammate?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now. So I would actually say there's this book that's called, well, there's actually a Netflix show about it, but it's about, I think it's called Fats, Oils, Salt, and something. I'll have to get the name for it, but it's really good. It's a Netflix series, but there's also a book about it too, and it's basically how to use those 4 elements in your cooking and how that kind of changes everything.
Okay, awesome.
Well, that might be something that I'd be interested in. I'm always trying to like come up with new recipes because I'm not a very good cook, but I do like to meal prep. So I'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah, and if you want, you can always watch the Netflix series first. You don't have to read it.
Yeah, that might be a good segue into it. So thank you. Those were great answers. We like to have a little fun, and I think that's a good way to kind of just some good like quick questions to kind of get to know you better. Not just as a player, but also as a person. But our final question today, before we let you go, is what advice do you have for young lacrosse players hoping to play at the college level or now the pro level?
Oh, that's a good one. I think the biggest piece of advice I would give to them is just, immerse yourself in the game and to try a lot of different things, a lot of different ways. I think all too often we get like the one coach who teaches us the one way, and you really limit yourself as a player if you don't really do your homework and research the game, because there's always more than one way to approach something, whether it's a shot or a save. So to really just soak up everything, every piece of information, whether you agree with it or not, just to kind of become an encyclopedia of lacrosse is really the biggest thing I can give to the next generation.
No, that's awesome, and I think what you guys are doing is great, because we talked to Kylie Ohlmiller a little bit, and how it's kind of nice now that the current generation can have aspirations to be a professional lacrosse player, and you guys are paving the way for that. So kudos to you. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys are doing a great job, and we enjoy watching you guys in person and on ESPN3. So best of luck. I know you guys have your final game this weekend against the Brave, so best of luck to that, and thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, you just heard Liz Hogan. We're looking forward to watching her play in their final regular season game coming up this weekend. But let's get into these WPLL games. Why don't we start out with the Command and the Brave that started first on Friday. Adam, you were in Baltimore at Loyola for the game. What did you see out of this Command and Brave game?
Yeah, this was a fantastic matchup of two pretty strong teams too. Now we know playoff bound squads. Rookie Dempsey Arsenault had 5 points on the day for the Brave with 1 goal and 4 assists. And then last year's league MVP, Marie McCool, came up with the same amount of points, but in reverse, she had 4 goals and 1 assist. So fantastic game for the Brave. Dana Doby also notched a couple goals for them on her home turf, since she's an assistant at Loyola, which was pretty cool to watch. There actually was about 6 or 7 players on the weekend that were there playing from Loyola University for the Greyhounds. So it was pretty awesome that in the intermission of the Game 1 and Game 2, the Greyhounds actually took a photo with commish Jen Adams, who is the current head coach of Loyola. So it was a pretty awesome moment for them to play back at Ridley Athletic Complex, despite it being a makeup game from last week. So pretty awesome to see, but great game by the Brave. The Command played well, and most of the statistics were pretty close when it came to the team stats, but the big difference was at the draw control. The Brave won 17 to the Command's 8, and that was mainly because of Marie McCool. She had an awesome game, and hopefully she'll continue on with that success once the playoffs hit in a few weeks.
Yeah, so the Command, dropping this game, looked like their playoff hopes could be hanging in the balance with this being their last game. So they awaited the winless Fire and to see what they had to do against the Pride. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that game, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. Despite the score being 16-12 as the outcome, it was actually a lot closer than it seemed. The Pride were able to put a deep 2-point goal in late once the Fire had pulled their goalie to solidify their victory. But the Fire had a chance to tie this one up late. They got a couple 2-point shots off in the last minute of the game that missed, and they just weren't able to pull this one out. But it was probably arguably their best game of the year. Hannah Nielsen for the Fire came up huge, 4 goals, 3 assists on the day. So really, really strong performance by her and other members of the Fire. But the Pride just had the more well-balanced offense. They actually had 6 players score at least 2 goals in the game. Sammy Jo Tracy, who we've talked about on the pod numerous times. Another big day at the draw control, won 18 to the Fire's 12. Liz Hogan, friend of the pod, obviously had a strong game in cage. And unfortunately, this one knocks the Fire out of the playoffs, and we have our 4 teams. They'll head to Yale for the semifinals, and then back to Sparks, Maryland for the championship in a few weeks. So really successful season 2 so far for the WPLL, and looking forward to watching some really competitive ball going forward.
Yeah, so like you said, the playoff field is set. You have the Brave will play the Pride, the 2 and the 3 seed, and then the Fight will take on the Command as the 1 and the 4 seed, respectively. It's still got one more week of the regular season. Even though the Fire's playoffs hopes have been ousted, they will take on the Fight next week, and then the Pride will play the Brave next week as well, kind of just for bragging rights. Even though one will get the 2 seed, one will get the 3 seed, depending on the winner. They'll still end up playing each other in the playoffs. But yeah, no, some great games this weekend. It was great for us to have you there, Adam, and I'm sure you enjoyed the product live. And since the game was rescheduled so late notice, that was the only way really to watch these games was to go in person.
Yeah.
So it was great to see the product on the field, and we're looking forward to the final regular season weekend and the championship coming up as well. So following that, we do want to discuss the PLL a little bit, even though they had their off week and they're preparing for their All-Star weekend this coming weekend. The trade deadline is upon us. July 22nd will be the end of the PLL trade season, and we still have some potential trades that might be out there. I know you mentioned, Adam, it's kind of interesting trying to talk about some in-season and off-season moves that might be made because we don't really know how long these players' contracts are, as well as every team's kind of still in it. Even the 1-5 Chrome have the best goal differential, and they have a chance, to make a run if they put some wins together. So no one's really in sell mode. We could see some buyers. Tell me what you're thinking this final week of the PLL trade season, and who are some players that you think could either be on the move, or do you see most of the teams kind of sit and put this final week?
At this point in the season, I'm not sure what the squads are going to do. We talked about some players who could be on the move. It'd be a great opportunity for Chris Cloutier to make a move. I don't think they've been utilizing him as much as they could with the Atlas this year. And I think he'd be an awesome addition for the Chaos with his style of play. I think he'd fit really well into that system. Not sure what they'd have to give up potentially and what the Atlas would want back. But I think he'd be a fantastic fit when it comes to what the Chaos bring to the field every week.
I got to agree with you about Cloutier. He just really hasn't meshed well with this attack, with McCardle and Law and Ryan Brown. I don't know. I think a change of scenery would be good. I do like him going to the Chaos because I think his style would fit in well with Connor Fields and Miles Thompson. But that would leave somewhat of a hole for the Atlas, and that's why I really like Joey Sankey maybe getting traded to the Atlas. I know he's injured right now, but that's a guy I think that can really run that offense from X, can score in a variety of different ways, and I would love to see him feeding, Ryan Brown for some time and room looks. So I don't know what his health status is right now. Obviously, the Redwoods added Jules Henningberg, and Ryder Garnsey has been playing well for them, in addition to Matt Cavanaugh and Wes Berg. So there's really not a lot of room on that offense, really, for Sankey when he does come back. So that's why I think he might be a potential trade chip. Obviously he was a great player at UNC, and I'd really like to see him go back to his Carolina blue colors and maybe join the Atlas. And there's another attackman. I know we're sticking mostly with attackman here, but another attackman that's kind of been on our radar that could get moved, and I know Tanner Demling of Lacrosse Bucket kind of threw this name out there. Kevin Rice would be a guy who really has been kind of quiet on the Archers. I think he does a lot more off ball than we give him credit, but he's another guy I think that would really benefit from a change of scenery as well. I know you mentioned, Adam, about the goalie situation kind of being set in stone. We don't really see any goalies getting moved.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on the goalie situation. I think the changes in goal, in cage, that have happened this year so far are the changes you're going to see. I think it seems like the Archers are moving forward with Drew Adams as their starter. That obviously could change, but I think that's their change of scenery in cage for the Archers. I think everyone else is pretty set, and even the Chrome, who kind of went back and forth with Galloway and Brett Queener until Queener got hurt. I think they're set, and I don't think Galloway has been their problem this year. So whether it's the two rookies and Timmy Troutner and Jack Kincannon, or Kyle Bernlohr, who obviously isn't going anywhere soon, I think we're set in cage going forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we'll both have our eyes on this PLL trade deadline as it approaches, July 22nd, right after the All-Star break. So we'll keep our eyes peeled, and we'll let you guys know on our social media channels if anything goes down before that deadline. But that kind of brings us to our game picks, Adam. We both went 4-4 on the weekend. Adam, you're sitting at 13-14, just a little bit below 500. I'm at 15-12. So still neck and neck for us on the season. No PLL games this weekend again, but who do you like between Team Rambo and Team Baptiste in the All-Star game on Saturday?
I'm going to have to go with Team Rambo in this one. He has a squad that's pretty strong on all cylinders. Not that Trevor doesn't have an awesome squad as well, but I'm going to go with Team Rambo in this one.
I'm going to go with Baptiste. I think his attack group that he picked is lethal, and I also think he's actually going to be the most interesting player to watch on that team, just because I think the best matchup for him would have been Joe Nardella, but he wasn't voted an all-star. We have Greg Grenlian out there who's coming off of a hamstring injury. So, again, we're going to see the teacher versus the master in this all-star game. But I think I'm going to give Baptiste the edge, who is currently leading the league in face-off percentage. So I think his team gets a little bit more possessions, and I think Team Baptiste comes out on top. All right, Adam, we have some MLO games this weekend as well. The Blaze are visiting the Cannons, hopefully trying to get that win after, coming up just short last Saturday. Who you have in this game?
I'm going to take the Blaze in this one. I think they're going to be hungry to come back after what they did last weekend. I think that attack line comes up big again. I think Shane Jackson has a huge game, and they pull this one out in Quincy.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I think the Blaze are due for a win. They've been oh so close. That attack group is too lethal to not get it done. You have Stotts, Shane Jackson, Brendan Sunday. I mean, he had 4 goals, 3 assists in the last Cannons game. So I expect them to have a big day as well. And, I think they're going to come out on top in Quincy as well. So the following game on that Saturday at 7 p.m. is the Lizards at the Bayhawks. Who are you picking in this one?
I think just for purposes of making things exciting going forward, I'm going to go with the Lizards in this one. I think they found some of that mojo that they were lacking earlier on in the season. And let's see if Dylan Malloy can put a game together like he did last week, and see if Rob Pennell can have another strong one as well. I'm going to go with the Lizards in this one.
I feel like they're they got a fire under them. I think they're out to prove something. They had a big win against the Cannons last weekend. And that attack group's playing well, like you mentioned. But I think, Austin Couts figured it out in cage. And this defense, with Ben Randall, I think is going to have this Bayhawks offense kind of on lock. It's definitely going to be a close one. The last one between these two rivals was 16-14, with the Bayhawks barely squeaking one out at the end. So I think it's going to be another close one this time in Annapolis, and I'm going to pick the Lizards as well. And then our final game on Sunday, we have the Outlaws hosting the Rattlers in Denver. Adam, who are you picking in this one?
You know what? I just don't think I'm going to pick the Rattlers to win a game until I see it with my own 2 eyes. So I'm going to stick with Denver in this one. They're home, play well at home, going with the Outlaws.
Yeah, I'm going to go with, the John Grant Jr. as Lannion squad in the Outlaws. Again, they're playing at home. They always have a big crowd at these games. And, until the Rattlers can kind of show that they can put 4 quarters together, I think I'm going to, continue to pick against them. So I'm going Outlaws as well. All right, and then, Adam, we mentioned in the WPLL, we have 2 games. They're going to be meaningless in terms of playoff implications, but still looking to watch some great women's lacrosse. So who do you have between the Pride and the Brave on Saturday?
This is a super exciting one. Whoever wins this one's going to get the 2 seed, and it'll be a rematch in the semifinals. I think the Brave are a really strong team, but I'm going to say the Pride pull this one out. Our guest this week, Liz Hogan, comes up big for a Pride victory.
Yeah, I'm going to go Brave. I think, the Dempsey Arsenault-led offense is going to, come out, again, really strong in this one. And I think, they kind of stick it to the Pride, but it'll be interesting to see who wins this matchup, because it's hard to beat teams twice in a season. So I don't know who will get the edge by winning this game, but I'm going to go with Brave in this one.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if teams hold back some of their game plans, since they obviously already know they'll be playing the week after. So it'll be interesting to see a really strong battle between Sammy Jo Tracy and Marie McCool at the Draw Control X. So I'm excited to watch this one and going forward as well.
No, absolutely. And then going off of that, the Fight will take on the Fire. The Fight, they already have the top seed locked out. The Fire have no way of making the playoffs. So, Adam, who are you picking in this one?
As much as I'd like to take the Fire in this one, I don't think I can go against the Fight. I picked them at the beginning of the season to win the WPLL championship, and I'm going to continue to do so. They are too strong on offense, defense, and cage for them to lose this one.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go Fire just based on motivation. You have a Fight that, they already got the top seed locked up. I don't think they're going to rest any of their players. I think they're all going to, come out and play and, make sure they're at least in a groove going into the championship weekend. But I think the Fire are probably disappointed with how this season's gone. They don't want to go winless. They're going to have a lot more on the line than I think the Fight will. And so I think they're really going to take it to them. And I'm going to have the Fire come out on top in a close one in this one. So those are our game picks. That wraps up our podcast. Send us any questions that you guys have. Tweet at us at Pro Lacrosse Talk, DM us on Instagram, or email us at prolacrossetalk@gmail.com. We also have our website, prolacrossetalk.com. A lot of great content that we have up there, whether it's recaps, game previews, or even some fun articles like we did with the future PLL expansion team ideas. We try to have fun on the website, so let us know what you think. Additionally, we are on Stitcher and Spotify, as well as iTunes, and every major podcast channel. So please, follow us, subscribe, give us a review. Let us know, how we're doing. We love your feedback. Give us 5 stars if you guys like it. If not, feel free to reach out to us and let us know what we can improve upon. Be on the lookout for our podcast next week as well, because, Adam, we have a big guest coming on our show next week. Do you want to tell them who it is?
None other than Captain America himself, Tommy Schreiber.
Tom Schreiber is coming on our podcast following our All-Star break coverage. So looking forward to talking to him about how the PLL season's going, as well as, his past career with Princeton and Team USA. So really excited to have Tom on the podcast. We appreciate him coming on the show. So be on the lookout for that podcast episode next week. So that brings us to the end of our podcast. We now have overtime. Adam, what are you looking forward to most this weekend?
I think it has to be the PLL All-Star Game. We haven't seen one of these before, and I think they're going to pull out all the stops for the game in LA, so I'm really excited to see what type of experience they put on for the All-Star Game.
Yeah, I'm going PLL All-Star Game as well, but I'm actually more excited about the skills competition that's going to be on NBC Gold. They have a really interesting group, like the fastest shot competition. It's not just, attackman middies. You have Jared Newman, a defender who's actually going to participate, and a goalie, Blaze Reardon, is also participating in the fastest shot competition. Now, I'm not sure if Blaze is going to use a goalie stick or not, so that's kind of going to have a bit of an impact on his success in the competition, but you can kind of tell they're really trying to have fun with this. It's supposed to be a fun weekend, and, I think the players are really enjoying it as well. So it'll be a nice change of pace from the fierce competition we've seen from the PLL so far. So really looking forward to this All-Star Game and skills competition this weekend as well. But that wraps up episode 7. Thank you guys for listening, and we hope you tune in to next week for Pro Lacrosse Talk.